It is now 500 days that Hamas is holding hostages in captivity in Gaza. 73 hostages remain in the terror dungeons, some alive and others not. Hello everyone, I'm Westropp-Evans, and today is February 17th, 2025. This is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokespersons Office. Today is 500 days since Hamas's October 7th massacre, 500 days since the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, 500 days since Hamas death squads ravaged Israel's most dovish, peace-loving communities, and 500 days since Hamas made war on revelers dancing at a music festival. 500 days that 73 hostages are held in Hamas terror dungeons, only half presumed alive. 500 days that the hostages are tortured on racks or with shrapnel in their faces. Hamas monsters are proud of their mass homicide and hostage-taking, and Hamas vows to do the October 7th massacre again and again. And that is why Hamas cannot be our neighbors ever again. Hamas is keeping the hostages as insurance so that Hamas can continue to rule, and we must tell Hamas's backers in Qatar, Turkey, and of course Iran to tell Hamas to let the hostages go. We cannot let Hamas keep them. We cannot let Hamas remain. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just said, "We will eliminate Hamas's military capability and its political rule in Gaza, and will bring our hostages home, and will ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel." Hamas cannot rule in Gaza. Our hostages must come home, and Gaza must not threaten us again. Now, the US just sent a powerful message to those trying to destroy Israel. The message is that the United States will back Israel in its self-defense against the likes of Hezbollah and Iran. The message was delivered in the form of 1,800 heavy bombs for Israel, and a ship carrying these 2,000-pound bombs docked, was unloaded into trucks, and took the bombs to Israel's air bases. These are the kind of bombs that Hezbollah's leadership in Lebanon was struck by when the IDF targeted them. These are the kinds of bombs that can threaten Iran's weapons programs. And the shipment of bombs was held up, but released by the current US administration. Israel is fighting a 7-front war against the Iranian regime and its many proxies in the region. And Iran wants to light the Middle East on fire and watch it burn. So when the US and Israel project strength, it is actually a way to make the whole world safer. All right, let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Asher. Our first question comes from Instagram. We're hearing reports that Israel is pulling out of Lebanon. Does this mean that Hezbollah has been defeated?
Yes, in accordance with the ceasefire agreement that Israel had in place with Hezbollah, Israel is due to pull out, and they've said that the IDF have said they will do so tomorrow. That being said, the IDF will retain certain strategic positions in the region in order to ensure that the safety and security of northern Israel is maintained. Now, what we don't really know for the time being is what that does mean for Hezbollah in the region. Clearly, the IDF has made a strategic call to say that it is safe for them to pull back for the time being. But whether that means that Hezbollah has been truly removed from the region, I guess we'll have to wait and see. What we need now is for global pressure to continue to stop Hezbollah from continuing their militant actions in southern Lebanon. And we need the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army to be able to step up and take control of that region in order to protect the people of Lebanon, in order to protect the people of northern Israel, in order to ensure that we don't return to the state of war that we saw last year.
Thank you. Our next question comes from X. We're hearing reports from Steve Witkoff from the US that phase 2 of the hostage deal will definitively happen. Is this true? And do we know if anything has been negotiated as of now?
Yep. So just for everyone watching, Steve Witkoff is the US special envoy in the Middle East who's working as the Trump administration's chief negotiator here in this region, trying to make some sort of ongoing deal to help keep the ceasefire alive that we currently have, both in the south and the north, and obviously further deals that may take place into the future. What we did hear today is these comments coming from Witkoff himself, saying that phase 2 definitely will happen. And while that is a strong principle and it shows the support of the US for Israel in these ongoing ceasefire negotiations and the hope that we will all have here of getting all the hostages back into phase 2, for the time being, details remain scant. We don't really know whether Hamas is coming to the table in any fair and honest way. And we've seen in the past, just last Saturday, Hamas attempted to pull out of the deal, threatening not to release the hostages, which they ultimately caved on in the wake of so much pressure from the US administration, from Israel, from its other backers around the world. And so it's a clear sign that that sort of pressure is critical now more so than ever, to keep on Hamas, to make sure that they know that they have to release these hostages, or as has been said in the past, all hell will break out. And that is a lose-lose situation for absolutely everyone.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Debbie on Instagram. Could you please speak about Hamas or other terrorist groups in Judea and Samaria and what Israel can do to help eradicate them?
So the threat of Hamas and other terrorist and militant organizations all across the 7 fronts that we've spoken about so many times in the past is absolutely real and there. The West Bank certainly is the same issue that we're seeing there, where there are militant organizations that have taken root within the communities there, that are able to access those parts of the region, coming in via Jordan or other areas, and are able to get the sort of support that Iran is trying to proffer for its proxies all around the entire Middle East, and their axis of resistance as they attempted to put a ring of fire, as they would call it, around Israel. Now, Israel has summarily defeated much of that axis of resistance, but these pockets still remain. And they must be taken seriously, because the last time Israel failed to take a threat sufficiently seriously, we had ended up with October 7th, 2023, a day that should remain in infamy for all those people, freedom-loving people around the world who understand the horrors and terror that was caused on that day. We will not allow that to happen again, no matter which direction it comes from, east, west, north, or south.
Thank you. This is our final question. After the release of the last few hostages, we've learned a lot more about the status of the remaining hostages in Gaza. Sue on Instagram asks, is there any news on the Bibas family? Do we know who and who isn't alive?
So for the time being, unfortunately, we do not. Yes, we have had a steady drip feed of information, most notably coming from released hostages who are able to report on what they see, who they saw, when they saw them, and give that those little slivers of information to their families, loved ones, and to the country as a whole, to inform them of where people may or may not be, whether they'll be alive, dead, or what state they may be in. But really, again, as we've called it before, it really is a sort of sick waiting game that we're all forced to play here, while Hamas have their disgusting little ceremonies that you see time and again, where they parade their troops suddenly back in full uniform after having spent well over a year hiding in civilian clothing behind their own people, and of course behind the hostages they took on October 7th. You know, these sort of actions from Hamas are to be expected, but as it stands right now, we have a real dearth of information, a real lack of true concrete understanding of where everyone is, where the remaining hostages are, what state they were in, and how we will get them back, and for some even when we would get them back. This is what we're continuing to fight for, and this is the pressure that must be kept up on Hamas, and this is why this time is so critical. All right, that is all we have time for today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time. That's 8 a.m. on the East Coast. I'm Westropp-Evans. Thanks for watching.